Hello, and welcome to the Christian Habits Podcast. This is the podcast that will help you break free from your strongholds, draw closer to God, and develop habits that will help you love God and others better. And now, here's your host, Barb Ravling.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am recording this intro while holding the mic in my hand, so hopefully it won't sound too bad. I am doing the last podcast episode without an office, so I'm very excited. We bought a house about a month ago, and we've been painting and organizing and unpacking, and by the end of today, I'll have an office. So super excited to get back to a regular life of work. I'm also excited because I'm going to be doing something new this year, beginning on January 28th. I am creating an online class on the renewing of the mind. So the beginning of the year, that's the time when we often think, you know what, I want to make some changes. I want to change something in my life. And this is going to be a class where you can work on that change. We'll be doing it together. I will be doing it live. We'll meet once a week, but I will have recordings available for those of you who can't meet. I'll have some instruction in the class. I will have some renewing questions or discussion questions. And we will be actually doing some renewing tools and working together on whatever it is in your life that you feel God wants you to work on for change. So super excited about that. If you want to sign up to hear more information on that, go to barbravling.com/course, COURSE. That's barbravling.com/course. And I'm not sure by the time this comes out if I'll have a full information page or if you will just sign up to be notified when I have information. We've been so busy with the move and also getting ready for the kids to come for Christmas, helping our son move, and it looks like our daughter might move here as well, one of our daughters. And so we've been very busy with exciting things, but I am so excited to do this class together. So go ahead, sign up there if you're interested. Okay, today's podcast episode, I'm very excited to have a guest, Jill Savage, on the podcast, and we are going to be talking about embracing the empty nester life. So let's get to that interview. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you here, and I'm excited to have Jill Savage with me. And Jill Savage, she's an author, a speaker, a podcaster who is passionate about encouraging families. I feel like Jill is an expert on both marriage and also the empty nest life. So I'm so excited for her wisdom. She is the author or co-author of 14 books, including Living with Less, Your Family Has More, No More Perfect Moms, No More Perfect Marriages, and her most recent release, Empty Nest, Full Life. And that is what we're going to be talking about today, Empty Nest, Full Life. Welcome to the podcast, Jill.
Well, thanks for having me, Barb.
It's good to have you here. And I'm interested in this topic. We've never talked about it before on the podcast. The empty nester life. I remember when we started it about 10 years ago thinking my life's going to be so boring with no kids home, and dropped our last kid off at college and we went camping on the Oregon coast. And I'm like, okay, the empty nest life is still pretty fun. And so I'd love to hear, what's your transition story? You have 5 kids and lots of grandchildren. 3 of your kids are married. So tell us what your transition was like from all those kids at home starting the empty nest life.
Yeah. Well, you know what? For me, there's a 13-year range from my oldest to my youngest. And so they started leaving over a 13-year time span. And when the first one left, we were in the middle of adopting child number 5. So in fact, we had to have a friend move her into college because we were in Russia. We were in Russia adopting our son. And he was 9 at the time. So we dropped him in between the age-wise between number 3 and number 4. And so that one, I felt like she was ready. I was a little on the distracted side with, the adoption. So that one didn't feel so difficult. And I would say that same for number 2, number 3, but 4 and 5 left within a year of each other.
Mm.
And that was like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. What's going on here? And, and then number 4, our last one to leave, he ended up actually getting married like 5 days after he graduated from college. And so all of that kind of happened really fast. He not only graduated from college and didn't come home for the most part, but he graduated from college, got married, and then he was completely out on his own. So that felt a little stark to me. But initially, I loved the freedom. Our son had graduated from college and gotten married in December. And so I went into the new year going, whoa, this is fun. My husband, I do a lot of speaking, and at that time, now we do in the marriage arena, but at that time I did a lot of speaking. So I would have little trips on the weekends to go speak somewhere, and suddenly he could go with me because he didn't need to be at home, taking care of anybody. And it was like, whoa, this is really nice. But 8 months in is when school started back up for the rest of the world. And that's when it hit me.
Oh,
wait a minute. I don't have to buy school supplies. Like that was like when it really hit me. And so, yeah, it was a bit delayed for me. And that's honestly when I feel like I started grieving and recognizing that, from here on out, it really is different. But I turned to God's word and I began to read about God's word and about letting go in God's word. And as I was doing that, I ran across these verses in Ecclesiastes, and they say, in everything, there's a season, a time to laugh, a time to cry. And I happened to be reading the Message version that day. I don't read that very often, but I'd picked it up for something else. And the way that it translated one of them was a time to let go and a time to hold on. Mm. And I thought, wow, I really feel like if I can learn what I need to let go of and what I need to hold on to, I will navigate this empty nest journey a little bit easier. And that became what I started searching for myself. And as that became more and more evident for myself, I eventually thought, you know what, I have to put this into a book because I know that it will make a difference for other moms.
Yeah, I like the way the book is set up because first is the let go, and you have all kinds of chapters on what to let go of. And then you have the hold on and all kinds of chapters of what to, grab hold of, which I really like. And I feel like I'm pretty good at the grab hold of, because I do feel like a lot of moms, you transition at that stage of life. If you're all about your kids, it's like, what do you do now? You have to reinvent yourself, figure out how you're going to spend your time and all that. So that's easier if you've already transitioned a little bit, but and maybe we can talk about that too, but the letting go of that part's kind of hard for me. I really struggle with that. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about the let go of part.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's the hardest part for most of us is the letting go. And part of the reason that I think it's so hard is because our job for 20 some years of their lives, 18 to 24 years of their lives, let's say, is to guide them, to lead them, to influence them, to help them. And then suddenly that isn't our job anymore. And so when you've been doing something for 20 some years for each kid, so in our case, of course, I said we had kids, 13 years apart. So by the time that the last one launched, I'd been doing this mothering thing for nearly 40 years.
Wow.
So when you do something for 40 years, it's like, wait a minute, now I have to turn it off. And so I think that's the hardest part. So some of the things that I talk about is that we need to let go of expectations. And wow, that one I think is huge because as long, I once heard somebody say that expectations are preconceived resentments.
Interesting.
And the more I've really dug into that, both in the marriage space and the empty nest space, I have to agree. And so when we, for instance, as a mother, we expected to know things about our kids, just kind of like what was going on in their world. But I remember the first time that I didn't know something, and you're going to think this is silly, but our son was away at college. I hadn't seen him for a while, and he came home and he had a mustache and a beard. And he never had a mustache and a beard. And I was like, whoa, when did that happen? And what I realized is if he had been at home, he probably would have said, I'm going to do no shave November. And I'm going to grow a mustache and a beard. And I would have known it along the way. I would have known when he was making that decision, but I didn't know it. And it didn't matter to me that he did. It wasn't like I liked it or I disliked it. I felt left out. That's what I felt. And it's little things like that where they start making decisions, maybe about a job change, and they don't seek out your wisdom. Or they get married, they become parents, and you don't exactly agree with the things that they are doing. And so you have to change your expectation that you get to weigh in anymore. You only get to weigh in when they invite you to weigh in. And that's a mistake that many of us make, is we still operate as if we get to weigh in, and we no longer get to do that. So you have to change your expectation about that.
Now, I bet some people are listening and saying, wait a minute, if I don't weigh in, they're going to wreck their lives. I need to weigh in.
Oh, yeah.
How would you answer that person?
Well, it's possible. It's possible. But guess what? They're now accountable to God. They're not accountable to you anymore. And so you really have to, honestly, how many times, probably most empty nest moms have moments where they see something happening and they're just like, oh, that is going to hurt. Oh, that's going to hurt a lot. I'm concerned. That's what's going on inside of them. But this is where I believe empty nest moms need to employ what I call pray, don't say. Do you believe that God has more influence in your life than your child's? Do you believe that God's voice is more important than yours? Do you believe that he's pursuing your child? Even if your child isn't walking with him, do you believe that he's pursuing your child? And if so, then your prayers are more important and louder than your words.
That's good. That's super comforting, actually.
Yeah, it really is. When you think about it, it really is. And yet it comes down to control for a lot of us. We begin to realize, oh, I wouldn't have said I had control issues until my kids left the house.
Right.
Yeah. And another thing that I think, and this kind of takes, it takes us into, we have to let go of our opinions, because we've leveraged and weighed our opinions in their lives for a long time, but it's no longer our job. And so we take those fears, we take those worries to the Lord. And certainly if our child asks, Mom, I'm thinking about changing a job, I'm thinking about doing this, what would be your thoughts? By all means, share them because you got the invitation. But if not, bite that tongue. Because if you become a meddling parent, and, it's interesting, we have what, some people would say is a bit of an epidemic of kids shutting parents out. And we have this kind of cancel culture going on. And what I see is empty nest moms and dads are really quick to go, my kids shut me out for no reason. And they really don't stop and think about what are the dynamics that play out? Because when you have a constant drip, drip, drip in your life, where you're constantly sharing your thoughts and your opinions when they're not asked for, then you're sending messages, unintentional messages to your kids. I don't trust you. I don't believe you can handle your own life. Um, I, you're embarrassing me. And those are not messages that our kids need to be getting from us. If our identity is in Christ, rather than our kids' choices and behaviors and decisions, then we can stay secure no matter what they're making, what decisions they're making for their lives.
Yeah, I can see the identity thing. And I've have friends who struggle with that, the pride issue. I feel like for me, it's not so much identity, it's more happiness. And I've talked to other people who are the same things. They're like, how can I be, you just grieve with your children if they're going through something hard, you're like, you grieve with them. Yeah. And then some people, I haven't said this, but some people say, I can't be happy if my kid's not happy. So how would you talk to those parents?
I would say, have you ever heard of codependency? Because that's exactly what a statement like that is. And certainly some people are way more sensitive and empathetic. And I'm not talking about not being compassionate when your kid is hurting, not being empathetic and being able to validate their pain. We're not talking about telling them to just, move through their pain, but we are saying, if really the rubber meets the road in our faith, our joy comes from the Lord, not from our external circumstances. And it really is codependent when I can't be happy because somebody else that I love isn't happy. And so that's giving way too much power, A, to our emotions, and B, to another person. And so certainly, if our child is grieving, we want to grieve with them. We want to provide a listening ear for them without trying to fix it, unless, of course, they ask us to help try to fix it. But sometimes they're going to go through some rough seasons. They're going to go through hard seasons. And when our emotions are hitched to another person's emotions and we're yanked around by them, then we've given too much power to that person and too much power to our emotions, because our emotions are God-given. Oh my gosh, they're God-given. But they're designed to inform us, not lead us. God's truth is designed to lead us. And so we don't want to give our emotions they're like on the dashboard of the car, there's the check engine light and the get fuel light. That's what our emotions are. They're like different lights on the dashboard of our life. And they all say, talk to Jesus, talk to Jesus, talk to Jesus. So they're designed to drive us to Jesus. But sometimes we give our emotions or our kids' emotions or other people's, we give them the job of the GPS in our life. And the job of the GPS is really only God's truth. And so I'd say a lot of times what the empty nest invites us to is it invites us to dig into some of our own insecurities, some of our own junk in the trunk, some of our own struggles. And when it does that, it begins to, we're invited to a healing journey in our life for some places that maybe we didn't even know we needed to experience healing.
Yeah, that's good. Because I think in coaching, what I realize is you might have one event and for one person it'll really bother them, for another person it won't. And often it's like, okay, what is it about us that brings that up? So I can see how it would be good to kind of look into that. Because a lot of times too, our kids don't care about the same things we care about. So
that's an expectation change.
Yeah.
That's one of them that I talk about is stop expecting them to care about the same things you care about, have the same values. And that's hard because we raised them in a set of values, right? But then they get to choose whether they carry those same values or whether they choose to value something else. And some of them will also struggle. Maybe we raise them in faith, but they're going to struggle with their faith. They're going to have to wander a little bit while they move from our faith to their own faith. And that's hard and scary for us to watch.
Yeah. Another thing you talk about in the book is not taking on our children's problems. I think there's a whole chapter on that. So tell us a little bit about that. How do you not take on their problems?
Yeah,
we're talking adult children. Yeah.
Right. That's one of the let go of your child's problems. So, so it's not our job to fix it. It's certainly what we have to learn how to do is we have to let go of their problems without letting go of them. Ideally, like that's really what we're doing, unless it's a toxic relationship, unless there's some really difficult dynamics going on. And an example of that may be a child that has substance abuse issues or something that's bigger than just little problems here and there. And so, in fact, that's where the concept, it's called lovingly detaching, comes from, is in the substance abuse world, adult children of alcoholics, the Al-Anon, when you love someone who struggles, is lovingly detaching. And you're not detaching from the person, but you're detaching from their problems and recognizing that they're the only one that can solve their problem. Even they can't even do what they need to do for you. They need to do what they need to do for themselves. And you can't force that. You have to accept that this is their journey. And so that's hard for us mamas because we want to fix it. We want to help. And I'm not saying that we can't, if your child is struggling with something, maybe a mental health issue, maybe it is a substance abuse issue, maybe it's even a marriage, like their marriage is struggling, right? So if they come and they say, I know I need help, then you could say, is there any part of this that I can help you with? Would you like for me to research counseling? Could that be helpful for you? You can offer those things and sometimes be of help, especially if somebody is maybe dealing with a mental health issue and they're super overwhelmed. They don't even know where to start, but they kind of ask for help. Then we can help them, because enabling is helping someone do something they can do themselves. But helping is helping someone do something they can't do themselves. And so, you've got a child that is struggling with mental health issues and they're overwhelmed with life. They're kind of emotionally shut down and they say, I need help, but I don't know what it is. That's a place where sometimes you can step in and say, would it be helpful if I helped you find a they have to get themselves there. They have to value it. But for the most part, what we need to offer is a listening ear, a safe place for them to share their thoughts, because oftentimes, a lot of times, when we share our thoughts in a safe place, we hear our own voice start to say things, and we actually can start to figure it out ourselves. So a listening ear, and one that responds with what Mark and I, my husband and I, call McDonald's drive-through listening. This is a really practical tool for empty nest moms, and that is you repeat back what you heard them say, you ask if you heard it right, and you ask them to tell you more. So that's what happens in the drive-through, right? You place an order, they repeat it back, and they then they ask if they got it right, and then they ask if there's anything else you want. Well, we apply that. So our kid says, Mom, things are really rough in my marriage, and I don't even know if I can make it. I don't even know if we're going to be able to make it. Oh, goodness. So what you're telling me is things are rough in your marriage, and you're questioning if it's feeling like, this even survive? Is that right? And I'm like, yeah. And it's like, well, tell me more about that. That is a listening ear. And you do that over and over again, and you become a safe place for your kids to land. But you have to keep yourself out of fix it mode, but letting them be able, unless of course they ask you, letting them be able to have a safe place where there's no judgment and there's nobody telling them what to do, but there is a listening ear that's helping them process.
Yeah. So what would you say would be the consequences of not doing that, of continuing to say things you shouldn't say, give advice? I mean, and you talk about so much in the book. I really would recommend anybody who is, going through all these things or entering the empty nest to get this book. So it's so practical. But what would the consequences be if you kind of keep your old parenting ways from when they were at home, when they're adults now?
That's a great question. And I would say the biggest consequence is our kids starting to shut us out. And they will do that in small ways. They will do that. Well, I'll give you an example of a gal that I have been coaching. She's a young mom. And every time she asked her mom to watch her kids, her mom was grateful for it and was like, absolutely, I'll watch them. But every time that she would pick her kids up, her mom would tell her all of the things that she was doing wrong as a mother.
That'd be hard.
Yeah. And so finally, as we processed this and we talked through this, one of the things that she realized is probably one of the best things for her own mental health was to not ask her mother to watch her kids very often, because it puts her into a place that rocks her and triggers her from her years of living under her mother's opinions as a child and a teenager, and it continues on. And so, I can just imagine that mom would be like, my daughter doesn't let me watch her kids and she shut me out. And woe is me, I'm the victim of. But the reality is this dynamic is playing out. And in her case, this daughter has said on several occasions, Mom, it would mean a lot to me if you would not share your mothering opinions when I pick up my kids. And that didn't stop it. And then, I had another young lady. It was a very similar situation. And it simply wasn't safe for her to make that request because she knew it would just launch into a lecture because her mother is never wrong. And so those kind of dynamics are playing out. And often we don't know it because that's our normal. And we think that we have a right to do that. And so the consequences are our kids start putting up walls or maybe just simply limiting time that they spend with us so that they don't have to come face to face with that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I could see that. Or even just being a shallow relationship, and just not sharing that much. Yeah, that's super helpful. Well, we talked a lot about the letting go. There's more of that in the book. And we don't have that much time left, but if you wanted can you share one or two things about the grabbing hold of that we do in the empty nest life?
Yeah. Well, Well, let me share two of them. One is friendships. And I think it surprises some empty nest moms that you kind of have to reboot your friendships in some cases. And that's because as we're raising our kids, we have what I call bleacher butt friends. And those are friendships of convenience. Your kids are doing the same things. They're in the same musicals. They're in the same sports. And so you've been sitting at ball games and maybe even going out for pizza afterwards. But when that's no longer happening, you realize, oh, what connected us was our kids, not really a friendship. And so you have to kind of reach out in this new season to see if, hey, would we like to continue that friendship? We're going to have to create it under new rhythms. And so, so I think that is a surprise to people. They realize, I thought I had friends, but I guess I don't have as many friends as I thought. And so, so yeah, we have to move from convenient friends to intentional friends. The other one applies to those who are married. And for those who are married, what often happens is the empty nest season of life shows us where there are some gaps in our marriage. And those gaps have been invisible because of the busyness of life. They've been invisible because what has bound us together has been our kids and their activities and the common goal of parenting and raising these kids together. And then when you've accomplished that, a lot of times you'll look at each other and go, who are you? I don't even know what we have in common anymore. And that that happens in a lot of empty nest marriages. But what we want to do is not ignore that. We want to say, hey, it's time to grab hold of our marriage. Maybe you need a little help to get back on track. You've gotten into some bad habits. You've gotten into some ruts in your marriage, and it's time to break out of those. Maybe you just simply need to get a weekly date on the calendar. Start prioritizing physical intimacy. Start having or initiating deeper conversations. Start being interested in each other's lives and what goes on in each other's work world or daily life. And that begins to start the spark of intimacy again. And intimacy is into me see. So it starts, from an emotional intimacy perspective. And a lot of times in the emptiness season of life, people struggle with that. It's really interesting. So my husband and I host marriage intensives, and we call them Marriage 2.0 intensives. And that's because we like to help couples create a 2.0 marriage. And sometimes, so it's an upgrade. It's like, hey, we've done this for 30 years, but we're kind of roommates. Let's upgrade this. Let's reboot this. And 60% of the couples that we work with in our Marriage 2.0 intensives, 60% have been married 25 years or more. And most are in the empty nest season of life, and they're just feeling very, very distanced from one another, and they want to reboot that. And giving them the opportunity to do that with a 3-day weekend where you're just focusing on them, their marriage, the dynamics that maybe aren't serving them well, and giving them the tools to move forward. It's a joy for us. It's like having a front row seat at watching God work.
Yeah, that sounds great and fun to do that with other people who have been married, the same amount of time. Yeah. Well, that's great. You have a lot of resources. This book is super helpful, and also has some journaling questions that will help you transition to the empty nest life. Where can people find you online, Jill?
Yeah, they can find me at jillsavage.org, JILLSAVAGE.org. And there's also, Barb, it does have some journaling in it, but not a whole lot of places to write. So we actually created an accompanying journal, and it's available on Amazon. So it's the Empty Nest Full Life Journal. So if you like to write a little bit more, you like a little bit more questions to prompt your thinking and help you process all of this, the journal's available as well.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast. It was a real joy to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. And thank you, everybody, for coming along today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your December and your Christmas celebration, and I will talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Christian Habits Podcast. If you'd like more help with stopping and starting habits, check out Barb's blog at www.barbraveling.com.